much for joining. Really appreciate you being here. I have something really fun prepared, I hope. My name is Fran Hinkelmann. I'm an engineering manager at Microsoft, and I will show you a real-life example of how GenAI dev tools can speed up your development. GenAI is everywhere. It's literally transforming the world at the moment. I'll scope this talk down to what AI means for developers, focusing on code assistants. There's a variety of code assistants available. GitHub Copilot is probably the most well-known one. They're all built based on large language models under the hood, and for the right use cases, they really speed up your developer velocity. Most of them come with enterprise security and privacy settings, so you can safely use them in a professional development setting. I used to be a SWE on the Chrome compiler team working on the JavaScript engine, and even though I've since moved on to Cloud DevRel, my heart still has a soft spot for compilers. So the other week I was reading Crafting Interpreters, an excellent book, highly recommended, and I was working on a compiler for the toy language logs that's described in this book. And of course, as I was working on my compiler, I wrote some sample input in this logs language so I could test it right away. You don't need to worry exactly about the syntax here for logs, but what you do see is it's really sad looking, right? There's no formatting, there's no syntax highlighting. It's super hard to see if the quotes and the parentheses match up. It really lacks formatting. Now, I've never ever written a VS Code extension, but I figured it would be really fun to try to write an extension for this new logs language. And obviously, I very much had a use case for it. All right, I promised you real-life examples for AI dev tools. So I want to show you how incredibly fast it is to build a language extension from scratch using GitHub Copilot. All right. So here's my toy input. You see no syntax highlighting, and I would like to write a code extension now for this new language. So what I'm going to do is I'm using the Copilot chat function integrated with Visual Studio if you get the extension. And I'll ask it how to build a VS Code language extension. All right, and it's giving me a bunch of information here, and it's saying the first thing I need to do is npx yo code. So I could copy and paste it in the terminal, or I can use this handy button here, insert into terminal. Right, insert into terminal, run it. All right. And this one says error. All right, so GitHub Copilot didn't really help me. So let's try again. Give me the correct npx command. And if you don't know, npx is the npm for executables, so you don't have to install anything globally. So most of the time I prefer npx. All right, so it fixed up this command a little bit. So let's try this again. Insert into terminal. Move over to the terminal. All right, so Yo generator scaffolds out things for me. So in this case, it scaffolds out a VS Code extension. We want language support. I don't have any grammar file to input. The name of my extension is logs, like the language name. The identifier is logs. We're skipping the description. As ID, I pick logs, language name is logs, file extension is .logs, and the scope name is going to be source.logs. So they have an example, source.ruby, so I just do source.logs, and we don't need a GitHub repository right now. All right, so it generated all that. It says, do you want to open this with VS Code? Yes, let's open it. All right, so the generator scaffolded out a bunch of things for me. I have a package JSON here, which you can see has something about syntaxes. So if we look into syntaxes, it's a JSON file. It has patterns of keywords and strings. Oh, and the patterns in the default are if, while, for, return. That sounds actually pretty good, similar to what I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click run. So this is now opening a new window. Let me just move it over. So this is opening a new window. And it has my logs input file. Oh, and that looks much better than what we saw before, right? I can see my strings. I have some parentheses. It knows if. It doesn't know var print. I guess that's not super common, so let's just add that here in the pattern. So we also want var and print, reload. All right, I think that looks pretty good. All I was using so far was using GitHub Copilot to help me run the right scaffolding tool. One thing that's clearly missing here is would be nice to have my comments very well visible. So what I'm going to do now is going back to my Copilot chat, add support for comments. And so what's really nice here is this GitHub Copilot has all the context from the files currently open. So it knows I'm looking at a JSON file that defines a language grammar, and it's giving me results right for that currently open file. So it says to add support for comments, you need to add a pattern in the patterns array. So we have keywords and strings already, and it says, oh, add comments. And then further down, it's defining what the comments are. So I can copy and paste this over, fiddling it into my JSON, but that's always painful if you've ever written any JSON. So I'll click this handy apply an editor button. And it's going to give me similar to a Git diff. It's giving me a diff, and it says, hey, do you want to accept this? So here it says, do you want to accept comments pattern /? That looks pretty good. And adding that in here. All right, reload my debugger. And wow, that looks great. Now my input is highlighted. It's also highlighting this string, which in my personal language is not a comment. So we can quite easily delete that. So here we have double slashes, and then we have a comment block. So let's just delete all that comment block. All right, now if we run this again, ooh, it broke everything. I lost all my highlighting here. So what happened? Well, if you pay attention, you see the squiggly line and you know I have an extra comma. But if we assume it's not that obvious, if I go back to Copilot and I say, fix it. So again, Copilot has the context of my files. And I say fix it, and it says, here's the corrected version of the excerpt. Okay, it doesn't exactly tell me what's wrong, but now I can click apply an editor, wait for it to apply, accept the changes, run it again. All right, and it fixed it. I'm back to syntax highlighting. All right, recapping. I know JavaScript. I used to work on a JavaScript compiler team, lots of Node.js contribution, but I've never written a VS Code extension before. So Copilot really helped me here to speed up my development. You saw this within 5 minutes. We had a working extension that got us pretty decent syntax highlighting, including comments, making sure the strings were closed, all that. GitHub Copilot gave me answers via the chat interface. It also gives me ghost text in the actual code, and it had this really handy apply in editor or run in terminal button, so I didn't have to copy and paste and figure out where everything had to go. And the answers were pretty meaningful because Copilot had all the context from my files. And also, it really helped me stay in flow. I didn't have to go back to a browser to search for anything, then get distracted by Twitter. It's all in one app. I could stay focused on that. I could keep my questions super short because of the context it had. All right. So in the interest of time, I didn't show it in the demo, but adding a formatter to it so that you can hit Command-Shift-F to format the text you have automatically in GitHub Copilot. That was literally asking Copilot Chat for add capability for formatting. And then the code it suggests, you see here, it registers a document formatter. The actual code for the formatter is increasing and decreasing the indentation level. And it's knowing by how much by counting the opening and closing parentheses. So fairly straightforward, but a lot of code to write if I come up from scratch. Whereas if I get all of this with just asking one question, really helps me to be faster. And so the code Copilot produced registered to the standard key binding. So the code is not only highlighted nicely, but just a simple Command-Shift-F runs the formatter like I have muscle memory for anything I do in VS Code. To me, that little project was super fun. I've never looked into extensions before, and getting something colorful and pretty just made it so much extra fun. Like, I like it when I code something and it's visible that I did it, not just running something. All right. In my demo, you saw how Copilot sped up my development, which super helpful. This allows me personally to do more projects or to spend my time on something else. And on an organizational level, obviously, if everyone is a little faster, it is an obvious time saver for engineers to focus on what matters. However, I lead DevRel teams at Microsoft, and I care deeply about developer communities. And my big question is, how will Gen AI fundamentally change software development? Like, not only faster, but what are the fundamental changes? I'm convinced that just like when the internet or when mobile were introduced, we are right now making history. And we can't even imagine yet what the AI transformation looks like. I think Gen AI will change ultimately what we consider software development. It will change programming languages. It will change how we learn and teach for it. I think documentation is fundamentally going to change. Not only because of how large language models consume documentation as input, but also because what we need the learner to walk away with after reading documentation and how people learn will change. I don't have any of these answers, but I'm really excited for the big changes that I'm sure are happening soon. And I'm excited to play a big part together with you in this transformation. So with that, thank you so much for your attention. I hope I inspired you to be bold and try something new, because with Copilot by your side, it might be much, much easier than you think. Thank you.